basically outsourcing in all of its forms seems to me today to be a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Right, that you're going to get somebody and you're going to throw some money that way, and it's whatever's going to come back, it's going to be as if you did it, and it's not, right? So this idea that parents can like outsource education to the state, or that the US can outsource making, oh, I don't know, surgical masks to China,
Yeah.
right, or whatever, like it all works until it doesn't, right? And when it
Yeah.
doesn't, you're screwed. So I really think we've got something supply chain wise really kind of wrong in Western civilization that we haven't really thought it through.
Yeah, I for sure. I mean, one of the trends that I noticed, so and I think Shaky is one of the people that has really opened my eyes to some of this. Is like how you send kids off to these schools and they get educated um, in a way that makes them radicals. Like they makes them like think that the people who came before them were ignorant. And I'll tell you from my own personal experience with my parents, kind of had that attitude about their parents. Right. There was like something that was sort of, and my parents were the boomer generation, and they were, and they, a common theme would be that, well, and this is mostly from my mother, who's dead, God bless her heart, but she would like to, comment about how, the older generation was, ignorant and didn't really know what they were talking about. And I kind of like looking back at it, that seems to be like a cycle that continues where if you how can it be that everybody was so ignorant yet we got here and so fine?
It's an arrogance, right? It's a type of arrogance
Yeah.
that we all like live in, and as you say, right, we got this far. It's not a small thing, and I think we somehow have adopted this view that like whatever was discovered in the last 30 years is the best thing ever, and whatever
Yeah.
came before is the worst thing ever, or something. And it's like, if you say it like that, it sounds idiotic, right? So it
Right.
clearly couldn't have been, but somehow we operate as if it were, right?
Exactly.
And yeah, I think honestly, right now I'm just going back to like, what is the tried and true? What is the proven? What is Lindy or whatever it is, like,
Yeah.
what has lasted for like a good couple of hundred years? Like, I'll trust that over some newfangled thing that came out of a lab yesterday, and they're like, everybody's gonna take it today, and you're like, maybe tomorrow. you know,
Exactly. Maybe
I'm not
tomorrow.
like I'm not like skeptical of everything always, but like give it a couple of days, right? Give it a month. Like maybe don't take it like the first day, like whatever. It's like you just think about all of everything, and you're like, we just tend to think that like, this meme that's going around, right? Like in Roman times, the average age was like of like the average lifespan was 35 years old. Yes, because like infants died, lots
Right.
and lots of them, right? It's not
But
like
if
like people would like grow up to be 35 and drop dead,
right.
right? They still live till they were 80. Some
Well,
people,
what they leave out in that average calculation is if you made it to year 4, you
yeah,
probably made it to year 60 plus.
right, or you died in a war, but
Or
like
or yes, or yeah.
one of the two, really. It wasn't quite that you like lived such a hard life that you would drop dead at like 36 with like white hair, like wrinkles or something, like. Yeah, but we just have this impression of the past that everything was terrible. And it's like, I don't know, man. I think like there were pockets of time when things were horrific, and there were pockets
Yeah.
of time where things were pretty great. And yeah, we just flatten it all out and we just put it in a bucket and just kind of throw it away. And I don't think we realize how precarious a situation our civilization is in right now with these global supply chains and the
Oh
whole thing,
yeah.
right? There's like Rube Goldberg machine like around the globe, basically.
Yeah, the optimism, like that's another thing that has really in the past 5 to 10 years of my way of thinking has evolved quite a bit. And this is comes from Taleb and whatnot. You mentioned the Lindy is that and shout out to Paul Pertesi who really
Oh
drills
yeah,
this into everybody on Twitter all the time. Um, is that optimization begets fragilization. Like everything that you optimize to and the more that you optimize it will increasingly fragilize something else in the system that you may or may not be aware of.
Yeah.
And it's the unaware of part is, I think, what you're getting at when you talk about that Rube Goldberg machine, and what people don't seem to understand about these supply chains and how fragile they are, and how simply, a country like Ukraine, which produces 30 between Ukraine and
Right.
Russia, that
Right.
produces 30% of all the wheat and the fertilizer, being taken offline for,
Right.
say 8 months. What the
Yeah. Or
hell's going to happen?
somebody somewhere just having their hand on a tap that you didn't think they were ever going to turn, but it turns out that politics, trumps money, and therefore you're screwed, even though you thought that money would trump politics, and it doesn't work that way. And now you're scrambling to make, I don't know, chips or whatever in like Oregon, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, holy shit, like build factories. It's like,
Yeah.
wouldn't it be nice if you didn't have to like scramble and be like exposed, caught with your ass in the air, right? Like missing like fundamental things to support a civilization. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, I was just listening to a Jocko podcast about that, because he's doing a lot to bring American manufacturing back. I mean, he's doing it with a couple of clothing products, and then some protein shakes and whatnot. But one of the things he talks about is that we took this entire the greatest generation built this entire manufacturing base, off the ruins of Europe, because they didn't everything was gone over there. But it was, and then once we had captured the market, we sold off that production capacity to the lowest bidder. And
Yeah. I mean, one startup I've sort of helped start up, not like my startup, but just help them, um is doing, sort of super, like, you see my 3D printer there in the back. They do like, they want to build like sort of mini sort of factories with like 3D printing style technologies that are like super agile, so they can build
yeah,
whatever they need whenever they need it. Like not consumer stuff, right? Like more
yeah,
high grade. But like I really think that that's kind of the future, is like adding flexibility to our supply chains. Because honestly, if you have a factory that makes, I don't know, like paper clips, it's always going to be making paper clips,
yeah,
right? And the thing is that, like, the world is a lot more fast moving now than it was. One pandemic here, one pandemic there, right? Things go out the window. And I think what we kind of need is a flexible manufacturing capacity that is near the markets, not inflexible manufacturing capacity that's far from the markets.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, what is there? Do you think there is a potential for an American manufacturing revitalization in the next decade or two?
Yeah, that kind of thing that I just described. Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, the US is very, very lucky, right? Like, it's the best defended place on earth or whatever, like with a lot of land from coast to coast, a lot of very capable people. And some of them in this generation are not that capable. They're gonna have to become capable, because hey, what are you gonna do? So I think there's a lot of all the right ingredients, right? So that people are going to do what they're going to do. They're going to have to do. But I guess what I'm personally worried about is AI, right? And how that intersects with everything else. Because
Mm.
that's the kind of thing that has the capability of like upsetting everything, so I tend to avoid thinking like more than like 10 years out, because I just kind of, it's always in the back of my mind that, like, unless either we figure out that it's not going to work, right? So we kind of like lay back a little bit, or we figure out that it is going to work, in which case there's really no point thinking past, I don't know, 2030, 2035, because it's just going to be, what they call the singularity is not necessarily that's like, Skynet is going to show up. It's more like that we don't know what's beyond that point. And I think that's kind of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a really, really hard time thinking like what world my kids are going to grow up in, mostly because I just know that there's a few of these factors that we went through that have the potential of like changing the world so dramatically that, no matter what I think about right now, it's just not going to be not going to be that relevant unless it's like super generic, right? Like
Mm.
thinking in terms of like epistemological frameworks rather than like which stock should I own, right? that kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't think there's really any. I don't think any futurist or anybody does 10 plus years out at all. to any degree of accuracy. I mean, if you can do you can predict 5 if you create it yourself, right? Like if you can do 5 if like you have a vision that you're kind of agile to, but and get somewhere. But beyond that, I think people are just a lot of mental masturbation.
It's just like there's like the linear models and where things are pointing at that you can probably like stretch out and kind of get a sense of like what a prosaic future looks like. But like every day you add to the tail like of those models, like there's
Mhm.
just these other like factors that have some small chance every day, but like with enough days that chance becomes like one. That they will blow up and they will change everything,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
how do you deal, like I honestly don't know, like how you deal with that is a big issue. And I
This,
have
this is a problem I
gathered
have with
cash and like food in your basement and that might not even help you out. Like I don't know, buy a gun.
yeah. I mean, this is my problem with like the climate change models and people. It's like, like one volcano can go off and it will produce more CO2 than we've made in all of our history.
Yeah, I'm, models aren't science. People have to understand
Exactly.
this. Models are not science. Just FYI, people. Like,
If anybody can leave here with anything today,
yes,
models
please.
models are cute.
PSA. What does Sam Harris say? Like, let's do some home cleaning or whatever he says it.
Yeah.
Some housekeeping. Uh, models are a thing that the dude made in Excel. Okay. It doesn't mean anything. It all garbage in, garbage out. Like, let's see the predictions that come out of these models come true, and then we might have something that's kind of sort of like science. But until that point, please, put them in a different pile than your science, because like look for things that are, like food. They're like, eat things with few ingredients. That's also
Yeah.
true of like your epistemic frameworks. Just
Yeah.
believe things that have like a couple of assumptions, like not like 50,000 assumptions. Like that's like processed food. Like just don't, just leave that for somebody else. But like, so that's why I kind of like what Brett Weinstein talks about with climate change. Is like, look, there's methane under the ice, and we don't know how much there is,
Yeah.
but we know that if it starts coming out, it's going to trigger like a recursive effect, and that's really bad. So that's probably not something we want to do. But like, he's not like, look at the model from that
Yeah.
science school of whatever that's like got like 50,000 steps in Monte Carlo simulations or whatever. Is it like, sure you can, but like there's this other model, and like, yeah, I've been, yeah, my world has changed a lot in the last
Yeah.
couple of years.
Yeah, mine too. I mean, I used to be one of these people who thought these things were eminently predictable, and I thought we had a grasp on things. And then, like, I was like, oh, wait a minute, everybody's lying all the time.
I'll tell you something that people have found funny. Like the most optimistic thought I've had recently is to think of multiple ways the world could be destroyed, so that they could possibly interfere with each other, and maybe we have a future.
I like George Carlin's quote: "The world is going to be fine. It's us that's going away."
Yep. That's a good quote to end on.